So you went through my first video of how to lighten your backpack, and you still feel like you want to lighten it just a little bit more. I've got you covered today. I have 12 more tips for how to lighten your backpacking load, and let's get started. Tip number 1, toothpaste. If you're still bringing a full-size tube of toothpaste, it's time to upgrade. There are tons of options here, but 3 of the most popular are to use pre-dried toothpaste tablets. You can also dry your own toothpaste by putting little dots of it on wax paper and letting it dry for at least 24 hours before you go on your trip. Last is my preferred method, which is just to bring a travel-sized toothpaste tube. But did you know that you can also refill them instead of needing to buy a new one? I haven't bought one of these in ages. All you have to do is press the open end of your travel toothpaste to your full size and squeeze the toothpaste in, and it goes in super easily. My second tip is to evaluate the clothing that you're bringing. We all know that it's important to bring layers, especially in the cooler months. But I've also really gotten into convertible clothing, specifically pants that can be zipped off into shorts. You can also find some that can be zipped off into multiple layers into shorts, capris, and full-length pants. Something else that I like to do is to wear leggings for when it's a little bit warmer out, and then I'll put on a thin pair of pants over them when it gets colder. This saves me from needing to bring a thicker pair of pants, which takes a ton of space in my backpack. Make sure you're also finding lightweight options for any of your heavier pieces, specifically jackets and pants. A down coat is going to pack down much smaller and be a lot lighter than a thicker, heavier, like snowboarding type jacket. My third tip is to bring a small fuel canister. I don't know why, but I made the mistake of bringing a larger one for the longest time, and now I'm fully converted to the smaller size. Once you've gone on a handful of backpacking trips, you'll have a better idea of how much fuel you'll need for each trip. This will allow you to bring just as much as you need. And similar to the travel-sized toothpaste, you can refill the small canisters using the larger ones, which are more cost-effective to buy. So buy the larger ones, but just refill the smaller ones to bring on your trips. And I'll have a link in the description with instructions for how to do this in case you want to try it for yourself. My fourth tip is to bring lightweight food, specifically protein. Many of us, myself included, are used to bringing protein bars to get that much needed protein on trail, but a much lighter option is to bring protein powder, which simply needs to be rehydrated. Another lightweight option is TVP, or textured vegetable protein. Wow, that's a mouthful to say. And again, this just needs to be rehydrated on trail. A bonus tip here, if you're worried about getting fats in addition to your protein, you can bring olive oil in one of those small TSA approved little containers. Just make sure it's sealed really well, and that's a really great way to get fats on the trail, especially if you're going to be cooking at camp. Tip number 5 is to bring duct tape, which is the universal repair kit. This saves you from needing to bring a specific repair kit for each of your individual items of gear. Tons of things can break or have holes in them on trail, and having a piece of duct tape wrapped around your water bottle or a lighter can really save you in a pinch. Plus, it weighs next to nothing. Tip number 6 is to bring a fanny pack, or a bum bag as some people call it. This technically doesn't reduce the amount of weight that you have, but it does in your backpack. And I personally use this anytime I'm backpacking to redistribute the weight from being all on my back to having some of it strictly on my hips and in the front. Things that I tend to keep in my fanny pack are my cell phone, my printed map, chapstick, a small sunscreen, and a ton of snacks. Finding a lightweight option is pretty easy these days, and the nice thing is I use this as a small day bag also. Tip number 7 is to reduce your coffee setup. I know some people are very particular about the coffee that they have in the morning, and they need that beautiful, picturesque, perfect cup of coffee on top of a mountain. I'm not so precious about my coffee, but if you do want to bring the coffee that you'd normally use at home, here's a good tip for you. Bring your coffee grounds in a disposable tea bag. You can buy these in bulk for really cheap, and then just fill as many bags as you need for the days that you're going to be out. Tip number 8 is to bring lightweight footwear. I know some people are very adamant about wanting to wear hiking boots, and some people need to, and I get that. But if you're going on a longer trip where every ounce counts, the weight that you have on your feet really also adds up. I'm an avid fan of trail runners, and really the only time I'll use hiking boots is if I'm going out in the snow or some really tricky terrain. But for the most part, I actually feel more stable in trail runners, and I love how agile and light I feel. Tip number 9 is to use your Nalgene as a hot water bottle at night. I've known some people that are able to forego the thicker layers to wear at night because they just kickstart the warmth in their sleeping bag using a hot water bottle. It's pretty easy. All you do is boil some water, put it in your Nalgene, let it cool down enough that you can stick it in your sleeping bag with you. And really, the sleeping bag generates so much heat when you're in it. It's just getting it started that it's a little bit difficult. So using your Nalgene as a hot water bottle can save you those extra layers that you might have had to bring otherwise. Tip number 10, this is super important. This is to waterproof your bag. If you don't always bring a rain cover with you, at least bring a trash bag that you can use as a makeshift rain cover in case you need it. Even if you're confident that there's no rain in the forecast, it's still a good idea to bring something to waterproof your bag. Your bag can get wet in other ways, such as slipping during a stream crossing or having your water bottle or water bladder break or spill inside your bag. And waterlogged equipment, such as your clothes and your bag, are going to weigh a lot more than if they had stayed dry. Tip number 11 is to bring photos of information that you need, but that you don't need to bring a physical copy of. Here are some examples. I, for one, really like to read before bed, but I don't necessarily want to bring my Kindle on every backpacking trip. Something that I've done before is to take photos of pages in my book and then I can simply read off of my phone before I go to bed. This also works really well for any instruction manuals for your gear. I have a folder on my phone specifically with all of the manuals for any gear that I bring out with me, so I don't need to bring any paper, but I still have that information with me. Wildlife and field guides are super fun to have in the backcountry, but I wouldn't want to bring the books with me. Taking photos of specific pages allows me to have that information without needing to carry the weight. Lastly, I always save screenshots or take photos of any maps that I'm bringing, but I do specifically bring printed out copies of my permits and any maps, just in case my phone dies or I lose it somehow, and then I always have those with me on hand. And tip number 12 is that sharing is caring. I just started solo backpacking recently, and let me tell you, carrying all of the gear that I need for a trip is super heavy. It's really helpful if you go in a group and you share the load across each person. Some items that can be shared among a group and distributed across everybody's backpacks are your bear can or your food storage options, your stove, any fire starting equipment, and even tents. My next backpacking trip is actually next week, and I'm very excited to not be going on another solo backpacking trip just yet because we get to share the load and we have to bring one tent, so it'll be much easier for both of us. If you're just getting started in backpacking or you need a little bit of help getting organized, I created these backpacking checklist freebies that are completely free for you to download. I'll leave the link in the description here. I hope you find them as useful as I do. I still seriously need to use a checklist anytime I go out, or I will inevitably forget my phone charger. I don't know why that's the one thing that I forget to unplug from the wall before I leave. So if you're like me or you want to see what I bring backpacking, check out these checklists. I've also included a couple bonus checklists for your pre-trip and your post-trip actions. I hope you find them very helpful, having a smooth backpacking trip from beginning to end. And with that, I want to thank you so much for watching. And if you are just getting started with backpacking, I have a video with a bunch of tips on how to choose the trail for your first trip that I'll link here. Thank you again, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!